Parsha 101, Haftarah 101. This week's Haftarah, this week's Haftarah should be for Parshas Tazria-Metzora, but because it's Rosh Chodesh, it's Shabbos, there's a special Haftarah that's read for Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. We'll go through all three Haftarahs because it's a double portion, and there's stories in each of the Haftarahs that come from the book of the prophets, and also the actual Haftarah, which is for Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. So the Haftarah for Shabbos Rosh Chodesh comes from the book of Isaiah, of Yeshaya, and it's a bit of a brimstone and fire prophecy of God kind of laying into the people of, why have you turned away from me? What is this you're doing? What is this behavior? And really speaking about the terrible things that would befall them for having turned from God, etc. But then the rest of the Haftarah speaks about the Jewish people coming back and how God will bring them back and how God will pour out his wrath against his enemies. And eventually it will be a time of great glory and much goodness will come. And every new moon, so every Rosh Chodesh, the first of the month, and every Shabbos, everyone's going to come together and celebrate. It will be much rejoicing and goodness. That's kind of a short version of what the Haftarah is. So that's the Haftarah that's actually read. Now, as a general theme, these two Parshas, Tazria-Metzora, are usually combined. They're almost always combined. Sometimes they're not. When they are combined, the Haftarah is for Metzora. Even though there's Haftarah for both, it's for Metzora. And actually, the two Haftarahs are linked. The same way the two Parshas are linked, the two Haftarahs are linked as well. So the main theme of the two Parshas is about Saras, this sort of, it was like a spiritual ailment. They call it leprosy, but it wasn't naturally caused. It was God, as a way of bringing certain people to repentance and teshuva, they were stricken with this Saras for the different reasons. So the Haftarah for Tazria comes to the book of Kings 2, and it talks about the prophet Elisha. Both Haftarahs are about miracles that the prophet Elisha did. The particular one for Tazria speaks about how first there was a great famine in the land, and of course not a lot of food, and someone came to Elisha with these grains, these barley grains, these barley loaves, and Elisha told his servant, okay, give it out to the students. He had hundreds of students who would come to learn and sit by him, and the servant's like, this isn't enough, and Elisha said, feed them, and we got hundreds, and you got 20 loaves here. Elisha said, feed them, it would be plenty, and it was more than enough. So this is one miracle that Elisha did. Then the second story that's told within the same Haftarah talks about the nation of Aram. They were the enemies of the day, especially against the kingdom of Israel, and it says that there was this general named Naaman, and he was a very exalted person, a very exalted general, because they had fought this war, and he had shot the arrow that killed the king of Israel's father, of Achav. So now Jehoram is the king, and they're not on great terms right now with Aram. They had recently defeated them, and this Naaman, they also, they were doing these raids and stuff like that. They had captured, for example, a Jewish girl, and she was now kind of like a slave servant to his wife. So they weren't exactly besties over here. So Naaman gets stricken with Saras, and he was a great, exalted, arrogant person that God was going to bring low now with this Saras. And what is he supposed to do about it? He tries these cures, nothing's working. So this Jewish slave maidservant in the house says, there's a prophet there's a holy man, there's a prophet in Shomron, go to him and he'll cure you. Just the simple faith, or the absolute faith that you had in the prophet to take care of everything. So Naaman at first says, what is this? It's like, come on, go. So he goes to his king and said, look, this is what the Jewish girl said. So the king said, fine, I'll write a letter, I'll give you a letter of intro to the king, and everything's going to be figured out. So he takes the letter to King Jehoram of the kingdom of Israel, because the kingdoms were split. You have the kingdom of Judah, the kingdom of Israel. So they're the northern kingdom. So he goes to the king, and the king gets it, and he starts wailing. He rips his clothes, wailing. Says it's just a trick. They're going to try to, you can't really cure him, and and everything's so terrible, and whatever. And Elisha sends a messenger, and he's like, what are you crying about? Send him to me, and I'll take care of it. So Naaman comes with his whole entourage and all these gifts and all this stuff that he has. He comes to Elisha, and Elisha doesn't even go out to see him. He sends a messenger out to him. He says, go dip in the Jordan River 7 times, and kind of like a mikvah, and then you'll be cured. And Naaman, the general, leaves like, what is this nonsense? I need to come here to tell me to go bathe in a river. I could bathe in any river. And he's going thundering, thundering and all this stuff. And so his servants tell him, look, if he had told you something, extreme or whatever, something difficult, you would have done it. So he's telling you something so easy, you should just go do it. So he acquiesces and he goes in the Jordan River and he comes out and he's completely cured. And he's very impressed. So he goes back to Elisha with all the gifts and all the everything. And he's just like, he's so overwhelmed by this miracle that occurred. And he wants to give. And Elisha said, no, I'm not taking anything from you, first of all. But Naaman at this point is like, I believe in the one God now. And I'm only going to serve the one God, etc. So it's a big turnaround that occurred from this miracle. That's where this Haftarah ends, as a general idea. The next Haftarah picks up, the one from Metzora picks up where this one left off. It's also from the book of Kings, and it continues about what happened during this time as well. So, what happened during this, after Naaman leaves, the general leaves, Elisha's servant, whose name is Gehazi, he went and chased after him. And he said, my master didn't really want to take anything, but maybe we could take a few things. We have these people we have to provide, whatever. He makes up this story about basically he wants to get some of the goodies that Naaman had brought that Elisha had rejected. So because he took it, Elisha knows about this. Elisha knows. And he told him, the tzaras that was taken from him, you got it now. And he was going to be, and also your sons who were complicit in this. So Gehazi and his 3 sons, they were going to be these lepers for the rest of their lives. And someone who has this tzaras cannot be in the main camp. They can't come back to the main city. They can't come into the main camp. Because usually they had to go out and do teshuvah, and then they were allowed back in. They had to purify themselves. But here, they were just going to be out. So the story occurs that everyone's fighting, etc., and they laid siege to the city, to Samaria, to the northern kingdom, and there's a famine going on, and there's no food, and some people resorted to cannibalism. It was obviously a terrible, terrible situation. And the king Yehoram gets very upset. He said, I want to go after Elisha because he's this prophet of God. He could have prayed to God and none of this would have come about. Look at how the people are suffering. And so he was going to have a servant, go, and if you see Elisha, just kill him. And then he went after the servant, we're going to make sure he's going to be killed. And the servant turns around to the king, realizing what's going on. He's like, if this whole famine is being brought by God, then what's it going to help us to kill the servant of God? So there's going to be 2 strikes. So let's not do that. Okay, fine. But they go to Elisha, come on, this famine that's going on, lift it. And Elisha says, this time tomorrow, food is going to be so cheap. It's not just that there's going to be an abundance of food, but it's going to be selling for pennies, for shekels. It's going to be so cheap. And one of the king's advisor, close aide, who was there, mocks Elisha. And it's like, even if God would open up windows in the sky, he would not be able to shower down enough food to provide for everyone. And Elisha's like, oh, you don't believe? You're going to mock this right now? You will see the miracle occur, but you'll not be able to partake in it. So the story picks up now, talking about 4 men who are outside the city because they were stricken with tzaras. The 4 men, commentaries say this is Elisha's servant and his 3 sons after the whole thing happened with Naaman, the general. And they're outside the city and it's a famine. Nobody's got anything to eat. And they're sitting there, they're like, what are we doing here? We got the Aram army, the Aramean army is there. They're at least provided for. We can't go into the city. Nobody's got anything to eat. We can't go in there anyways. Let's go surrender ourselves. So they might kill us, but we're not going to be any worse off than we are now. Or maybe they'll give us something to eat and we'll be a little better off. So they go to the camp and it's very eerie. They get there and they're like, why is it so quiet? And they look and there's nobody there. Everything, all the food, gold and silver and the animals and everything is there, but there's no people. They didn't know God had created a great miracle had occurred, that the army heard this thundering noise and all this stuff going on. And they thought, wow, the kingdom of Israel had somehow hired a bunch of other nations, had gotten their armies together, made alliances, and now they're all coming after us and we're going to be totally swept away. So they all went running, even though God made them perceive a threat that wasn't there. And they just abandoned everything. So you have the 4 men, they go and they're eating, they're taking stuff, and then they realize, hey, you know what, we should probably tell everybody else about what's going on here. So they go to the gates of the city and they're like, you know, guess what? There's a lot and it's there and there's nobody there for taking it and we can take whatever we want. So they go to the king, and the king at first is not believing, like, no, it's a trap, it's an ambush. Like, no, we're telling you, fine, we'll send some people out, we'll scout, we'll check it out. They check it and they see, really, there's nobody there. There's so much stuff and there's nobody there. So obviously now it's, hey guys, we have food, we finally have food. And everybody goes running. There's a massive, stampede to go and get provided for. So the king's aide friend who had mocked what Elisha said about how God was going to instantly make the famine be over because there was going to be so much bounty that was going to come. He he's watching over the city. He's appointed by the gates. So he's seeing everybody going. He's seeing that everybody's going to have all this stuff, but he gets trampled in the stampede. So he saw the miracle, but he was not able to partake of it, to participate in it. And the biggest thing we see from these stories is how instantly God can turn something around. That it could be, and it can even be so simply that God can just, you think a situation is so much one way, and within seconds, God can make it something else. And we have the general idea also is that Parshas Tazria, it doesn't only speak about this leprosy thing, it also speaks about the laws of the woman who gives birth and things like in childbirth and things like that, pregnancy, childbirth. And it's the general idea is the times that we're in now, these are like what we call the birth pangs of Mashiach, and everything that we're going through, we're going to realize what it's all about when the miracles will come of the redemption. It's the trial, the labor, the trials of tribulation, but eventually what it will yield, the great miracles that will come from it, the coming of Mashiach speedily in our days. Amen.